Hey friends, today I am going to be doing a comparison of the book and the show for Shadow and Bone. Season 2 of Shadow and Bone was released on Netflix just yesterday. Depending on when you watch this, it was released on March 16th, but I just finished reading Siege and Storm and I thought it would be fun to kind of do a comparison side-by-side analysis. I know that in this story you have Alina and those characters, and then you have the crows, and the majority of the crows storyline is a new creation for the show slash mixed in with Six of Crows the book and Crooked Kingdom. So I'm not really going to be talking about that a whole lot just because of the fact that season 2 is sort of pulling ish from book 2, Siege of Storm, so that's going to be where I do most of my comparison. A lot of it though has been pulled from the duology for the crows, so if that is something that you are wanting to read, I highly recommend it. It's an enjoyable read, but let's jump in. First I gotta put my glasses on though, because I'm an old lady now and I've got to read my notes. So I don't know if this happened for anybody else, but when I opened Netflix and I tried to load episode 1, it kept loading episode 2, and I was thinking, this is jumping into a story that is already established and I'm not really sure what's going on. So that took a few tries to fix, but then once that was all settled, I was able to jump in. Alina was having nightmares in the book, so this isn't an unrealistic start. However, when the book starts, they're already in a new place. They're not on the boat. So I didn't mind this change. It kind of showed you that they were transitioning into this new place, so that was fine. The whole checkpoint scene was new. Having papers from Kaz was kind of a little fun connection of like, oh yeah, they were hooked up last season and that was kind of a thing, but that was definitely not something that was in the book. A really big change is she's talking about finding the sea whip, and oh boy, that's definitely a big change. In the book, we have this notion that Alina's kind of being dragged along on everything. She's told about the sea whip from the Darkling. In the book, she only finds out about it from the Darkling, and they don't have the book that they're holding that was given to her from the apparat at this point. That comes back to them later, and Mal isn't as gung-ho to go looking for it as he is here. So these are all some new changes. They have given Alina much more agency and intelligence, I find, which is not unsurprising. She's kind of whiny in the books, and it's very YA, so it's not shocking that they would kind of make her more appealing and maybe more universal, even though a lot of the YA tropes, I feel like, do come into the show a little bit later. Stormhund is now with the crows, which I thought was a little bit weird. I understand how they've made this connection based on the fact that they had him be the backer for the job from last season, but this definitely is not how it comes along in the book. In the book, Stormhund is originally working for the Darkling, or so you think, and then kind of does a switcheroo and takes Alina for himself to bring her back to Ravka, and we'll get to the rest of that later. The room that Alina and Mal stay in the book is a disgusting hostel, and the innkeeper is not a fan of them. Basically, they're sharing a room with like 6 other people. They've been staying in this town for a while. Mal has a job, Alina has a job. She has pollen in her eyebrows from working in these fields. Alina would not have been in a library, which ends up happening. So that was completely different. We have our like calls to like. If you watched my video on my breakdown of Siege and Storm, you might know that I had a really hard time getting that sentence out. For some reason, I couldn't remember it. Mal was not spotted by the army, and I found this was a really awkward change. I did not like this chase scene at all. It felt very out of place. It just wasn't in line with anything that was in the books. Also, Alina had been very sickly, and that was because she wasn't using any of her powers, so the fact that she's like openly using her power seemed a little bit weird. I don't know. I wasn't really loving any of this. Tamar and Tolia, I really love them. They are great characters. They are introduced initially on the ship, and I don't love how they've changed this so much, but it kind of, I guess, comes back together a little bit in the end. I am going to talk a little bit about the crows here for a second, because Kaz and Pekka Rollins really doesn't have the background I feel like it needs in the show to feel as intense as they're portraying it out to be, but I understand what they're doing. I didn't mind Nina and Anaj's introduction to each other. Again, I thought that was fine, but all in all, it wasn't anything really. The military being there, again, I don't understand this really. I mean, his general would have been back in Ravka. They're not going through the fold anymore right now, so it really doesn't make sense to me as to why this guy is even here. I'm not sure why they've done this. I think that it's supposed to add some sort of dramatic effect, but to me, it just didn't fit into the plot all that well. Shadow Army looked pretty good, but all in all, there are a ton of changes in this episode. I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I can understand why they've made some of these changes, but they just weren't my favorite, honestly. But let's jump into episode 2. How they end up on the boat is completely different. In the book, Alina and Mal are kidnapped. They are not like willingly brought onto the ship, and they are brought into almost like holding cells on the ship because they're supposed to be prisoners of the Darkling. They are not in this like open sleep situation. The conversation about loneliness, though, is pretty spot on. The Darkling does say to Alina that no one else will understand them because they are the only people like this in the whole world. So that was pretty good. There's lots going on with Matthias, and that's just fine. The first and second army working together on the boat is something that happens later on in the book, where Alina, when she takes over the second army, insists that everyone come together and work together. This includes Grisha of different rankings and different groups, and that was something I liked in the book, but I don't think we're going to be really getting that in the show, so I guess this is a little nod to that maybe. I'm not entirely sure. They keep already referring to Alina as a saint, but there's then no mention of the apparat or the cult of Sancta Alina, so I find this a little odd. Like, are we supposed to just understand that she's all of a sudden become this, like, master saint already, and the apparat has nothing to do with it? I don't know. I find that a little bit weird, but they announced that they are Grisha, the people on the boat, and that takes away all the element of surprise, which is kind of disappointing because in the book it's really fun where the switcheroo happens where you find out that Stormhund is not, in fact, working for the Darkling. He's working for somebody else. And the crew members he has on board are Grisha. And this is like a really big reveal in the book. And I thought it was really fun. So it's kind of a bummer that they've taken away that plot line. And it's very clearly not going to happen. The island seems very odd. I'm not really sure why a sea whip would be like trapped in an island. In the book, it's very much out in the open ocean, and that makes much more sense. I didn't really love this island thing. I get that it's kind of supposed to make it like an excursion, but I just didn't love this. Initially, I thought this scene was going to be probably more gruesome than it was. In the book, it's pretty awful. They harpoon the sea whip and she doesn't want to kill it, but then she's forced to basically as a kindness. In this, we see that the sea whip almost is portrayed to be more monstrous and attacking people, therefore it's not so bad when it dies. But like, I think we're kind of underestimating and not putting enough value on the fact that this is like an ancient animal and it's just been killed, and we brush over that really quickly, and I didn't love that. It feels kind of very Harry Pottery with like chasing Horcruxes, and maybe that's why I didn't love it. It just didn't seem like an original thing, but that's fine. Not sure who the girl is that all of a sudden has the journals of Maritova, and I'm wondering why Bagra is here. Like, she's supposed to be in Oz Alta in the book, so I guess we're not going to be going to Oz Alta. That's different for sure. In the book, they go to Oz Alta, so I didn't really love that. The scales with Mal is a bit of foreshadowing, so that's something that will be coming up soon. And Alina wanting to go back to Ravka is very different. In the book, she's dragged there by Stormhund, so that is a very big change. Honestly, they changed a whole lot for this show. I'm not really sure why they felt the need to do that. I'm wondering if they're not getting a third season because they are cramming a lot of stuff into these first couple episodes, and it feels very rushed. I have a feeling that that's going to be kind of the pacing for the whole season, so I don't really know how I feel about it at this point, but I'm kind of sad with some of the changes that they made, especially the big reveal of Stormhund and his crew and doing the switch. I thought that was really, really well done in the book, so I'm kind of bummed that that wasn't something that took place, but all in all, we'll see how the rest of the season pans out. Were you sad or happy with any of the changes that they made in episodes 1 or in episode 2? You can let me know in the comments below. If you would like to help support me, you can hit like and subscribe. And if you would like to find me on Instagram, you can find me at Fantasy Awash. And as always, I will see you next time. Bye.